You don't want to do it because it looks unprofessional, but believe it or not, that actually does work sometimes. My name is Anthony Martinez. I am a current active firefighter in New York. I have been an active firefighter for 9 years now. Today, we are going to be looking at firefighting scenes in movies and TV shows and judge how real they are.
Where are you? Where are you?
The fires that I have been to, you're not going to see anything. I could tell you half the time that I go to a fire, I actually close my eyes because that's how much smoke is in the room. So by touching items, you kind of get a better idea and using your imagination on how the layout is.
I'm gonna get you out of here!
It does have the potential to create sparks. When it comes to most of the buildings that I've come across, when we've had a fire, an active fire, one of the things that we do as a firefighting team, our chauffeur usually will go in and his job is to disengage the utilities. And by doing so, at this point in that time of the fire, there shouldn't be any electricity that's on in the building. So I have witnessed one explosion. The reason that explosion happened was due to an issue with a gas line. All it takes is enough gas to fill up the area, and at that point, you can definitely have a massive explosion. I would say I have to give it a 4.
Everything's gonna be okay. The logistics panel should be to your left.
I absolutely 100% agree with what they did as far as putting a cover over their mouth. The only thing I would have added to that is trying to maintain a low profile. The higher you are, the more perceptible you are to smoke inhalation. We would never do that. We actually do utilize moving from one building to another as far as if it's a low-rise multiple dwelling or another building that's adjacent to it, but never on a high-rise, not the way he's gonna do it.
You're gonna fall through the fire. The magnets are gonna kick back on once you pass the fire line.
If you cut off all the safety features on an elevator, they can definitely ride through a fire like that. But there are so many safeguards for elevators. When an actual cable does break and it's on its descent, or even when it's going up, those brakes will automatically lock. As a civilian, you never should use an elevator during a fire. You want to use the stairs and actually descend away from the fire. When an active fire does happen, the outside vent firefighter will take over the elevators and recall them down to the lobby floor. I would give this scene a 4.
Joaquin got the keys, use it.
They still go in the building and we're already doing a surround and drown. At that point, it's an outside operation. We would never go in. We would get tower ladders and we would surround the building and dump as much water on it as possible.
It's open.
I've been able to force some very hard doors and wooden ones. There are some that they are a real pain. They are warped or they crack and they just will not open up as easy. And when you see him actually kick it, believe it or not, that actually does work sometimes. You don't want to do it because it looks unprofessional, but sometimes we'll turn around and just give it a mule kick and it opens up. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get through most of those structures. Sometimes it's just sheetrock, so you can actually punch your way through if you wanted to. One thing I do give credit to this movie about is anytime that we go in, there's always 2 members going in, 2 members coming out. Even if there is more firefighters, we always pair up.
Latitude 23 roof, secondary search negative, going upstairs.
One of the tools that he's using is a 6-foot pike hook. We are looking for any embers that would look hot enough where it could spark a rekindle, because all it takes is enough air to pass through over an ember, and that whole structure could light up again.
Here you go, buddy.
They did a surround and drown, so normally we would not enter this premise. So if you are going to enter this premise, we always bring a hook with us, and we always check the floor. We would kick in front of us, we would probe with our hook, make sure that the floor is substantial to support our weight. So unfortunately, as much as I love this movie, I would have to give it a 5. The only thing that deters me from giving it a better score would be, going in after they're doing a surround and drown already. I was actually very furious with this clip because we drill on roof rope rescues a lot with my department. So when I saw him put the axe in and use the rope around a vent pipe, that's a big no-no, because that is not substantial enough to hold the weight. We look for anything that would be substantial, a bulkhead maybe, or even if we had to, worst case scenario, we would even cut a part of the roof and actually tie off to the actual structure of the roof to rappel down. They had a portable saw right there that they could have used to actually cut a decent enough hole to actually tie off on a proper structure. The chances of the window actually exploding like that is very difficult to say, because a lot of these windows are tempered glass, and it's not as easy to break as you would think. When the window actually does explode and you see the glass shatter, you see everybody actually look down. That's actually correct. The minute you hear any glass shatter, you always want to go and look down. Last thing you want is glass in your eyes.
This cable's stuck in my DCT. I can't move.
Okay, I want you to cut the black cable. Pull your weight onto the rope. Just pop that cable free.
He did give correct advice as far as cutting the cable and trying to loosen it from the mechanism. However, you can actually see 2 instances where she almost lifts herself up. Those are the no-nos, because the minute you go and take your weight off that rope, it has the potential to loosen up the hook or wherever it's tied off to, and you have a potential for a fall. But as far as like the realism goes, they could have did a little better, but I would still give it a 7 because the techniques are still there.
Wait. Make sure you check it first.
Oh, yeah.
There's a certain technique that we use for actually forcing entry. One of those techniques is, first, you check the door for heat. That is the first sign. If it's hot, you know you're gonna have something behind that door. The next thing is, you never just break the door open. We always go in and check the doorknob and see if it opens up. You'd be surprised how many people actually leave their doors unlocked, and it makes forcing the door simple just by opening the door like a gentleman.
Clear. Stay here.
We have a tool called a Halligan. We would never use an axe. That one tool has so many techniques that you can use to get through many types of doors. It has 3 pieces. It's your pike end, your adze end, and your fork end. The way a backdraft actually occurs, during the decay stage, the fire is actually swallowing up all the oxygen in the room. So when you see the smoke actually being sucked back under the door, that's because whatever combustible is still burning, but it's about to die. And the reason why you get that backdraft effect is because when he opens the door, he reintroduces oxygen into that smoke-filled room. We actually have techniques to try to minimize those type of situations. We'll do something called a vertical ventilation, where we try to have either the roof firefighter or whoever is above try to vent out all the smoke from on top. This way we can try to minimize that explosion from happening. That's actually very effective. It's no different than having a blanket and putting it on a person. What you're essentially doing is trying to smother the fire and take out the oxygen from the fire, and 2, for actually cooling off the individual as well as the gear, because when your gear's on fire, more than likely you're definitely in excess of over 400 or 500 degrees. Our bunker gear is rated for a certain temperature. However, it's not a save-all. We do use it to go into hotter areas, but we're only told to limit how much we're allowed to go into a fire with our gear. I would give this one a 7. This is a classic movie scene. I actually enjoyed watching this movie. It was one of the reasons why I became a firefighter to begin with.
49, here comes your water.
Hit it, go, hit it.
I was actually glad that they showed the pump panel, because the chauffeur's job is one of the most important jobs on the engine pump panel. Without him and giving us water, nobody's putting out any fires. So that's actually really important. You have your engine company, their job is to put water on the fire. The truck's job is search for life, search for fire. We have multiple teams just on the truck alone. It's cool to see Steve Buscemi actually partaking in this clip. He used to be a firefighter, and he actually volunteered his services during the September 11 cleanup. I've been pretty close to a couple incidents where fire's blowing out the window. Regardless, we still have to go in, especially if there's a potential sign of life hazard in the structure. I would definitely give this one an 8. There's a lot of stuff that was going on in this video that we actually do in real life. It's not the actual fuel that's on fire, it's the vapors that are on fire. So it can definitely spread fast enough. A fire extinguisher is not sufficient enough to put out a vehicle fire. I'm just surprised that the officer that was trying to run and help didn't try to use the extinguisher to prevent the flame from reaching the second car. It wouldn't take very long at all for a small gas leak to turn into a major fire. I could tell you one that I had a while back, where it started off as a small leak and we were trying to contain the fire, and then all of a sudden the vehicle just started abruptly just losing fuel, and we ended up having to turn it into a foam operation because it ended up covering 4 lanes on a highway. And we actually utilized the engine pumper, and we pour a chemical in there called AFFF, and it turns your standard water into a mixture that foams up and bubbles and eventually smothers the fire. In a perfect world, normally we would not suggest pulling anyone out of a structure like that. Depending on the severity of their injuries, we would normally try to cut the door open and take them out in a manner where we would stabilize their spine, their neck, and then bring them out of the vehicle. But with this one, we can obviously see that there's a bit of a time constraint. I would rate it a 9, just because I like to see other people help.
So, see, no, come on!
So at that point, you definitely want to maintain the low crawl, because again, the minute you stand up, you're being exposed to that really hot gas. Even with me in bunker gear, I notice a building's hot when my shoulders start to burn. The only thing I would add to it is trying to cover at least the lower portion of my mouth. One of the things that I was always taught, especially in the academy, is bad air is better than no air. So even if you're breathing in smoke, you want to get low, and that's exactly what they did.
Cover her face! Put that blanket on her face! I got it!
Well, they did exactly what I would have done. I would have tried to cover the baby up as much as possible to try not to get the baby exposed to heat as well as the smoke. They have a higher chance for dying from a smoke inhalation fire. So we would definitely smother them a little bit, just enough to get them out of that structure and then bring them to fresh air. Well, at that point, they're probably going to need medical attention. We wouldn't want them running off. When you have that much smoke inhalation, we can only imagine the level of CO2 that is in your bloodstream. I would definitely give this a 10 out of 10 for realism, just because they did exactly what a civilian or first responder would do in a situation like that where they come into a house fire. This is actually as real as it gets.
13-13 is responsible on Charlie Brown. Edge 13
We actually still do have it at my firehouse, and even within the city, they're still in about every single firehouse. And I'll tell you this, 9 years in, I still use the fire pole today. It is a lot faster than going down to the steps. The one thing I didn't agree with was the fact that he actually stepped on the hose line. We take the hose line and we wrap it around the hydrant and then we lock it onto itself, because we don't need the potential of someone getting hurt because they're holding it with their foot. That's an accident waiting to happen. But we do a similar technique of having the fire engine move up to the fire building because we came up to the first hydrant that we had available. They definitely had a good technique of how they hooked up to the hydrant and the engine. Most of the time when we do it, our control guy works hand in hand with the chauffeur. We check the hydrant, and then once we know we have a sufficient hydrant and water pressure, we will then do the hookup, and then we'll talk to the chauffeur and start working on how many lengths we need for the structure that we're going into. I've actually dealt with my fair share of rats, especially in the city. Believe it or not, when you see animals like that running from a structure, especially that's smoke-filled, tells you you're in the right place. Because if they're running away from it, you're pretty close. So when he gets up to that area where he has to start putting out the fire, normally we don't ever go past the fire. We always want to maintain a certain distance from it because we don't want it to roll over us. So normally what we'll do is we will start to hit the ceiling first, cool off the superheated gas, and then we'll start to sweep the floor because all the excess water that's coming down, those steam droplets, they have the potential to burn our knees as we're trying to advance on the fire. You know what, I know my first day on the job, I made a lot of mistakes, but as a probationary firefighter, you know, that's the only time you make mistakes. So with that, I would definitely give this one a 7 because as a probationary firefighter, that's as real as it gets. You're looking at everybody else, you're listening, you're asking questions, they're telling you what to do, and your job is to learn. That circuit breaker popped and it created a fire. Electrical fires are more prevalent today than anything, especially since a lot of the stuff that we do now is mostly electrical. I've been to a lot of electrical fires that start even as simple as an outlet sparking. The fact that the chemicals are just out and about, all completely exposed, I mean, I know this is an old movie, but everything should be completely locked up. I know we have regulations now that say that all chemicals have to be stored inside of like a yellow locker. This way we know exactly where to go to make sure that we cool those areas down first. But that part right there is completely ridiculous. When you set off an explosion on a water tank, I wouldn't think that's the best suggestion. When you have a water tank on top of a structure, it's usually piped through the building so that this way it'll set off an actual sprinkler system. Here within our cities, we actually have two types of systems. We have a wet system or a dry system. The water tanks, they'll usually put out the fire with a sprinkler system, or we'll have our engine companies hook up to the outside sprinkler system and we'll wet it ourselves. This one's tough because the first half of it was actually pretty realistic. So I would definitely give the first half a higher rating. The second half, not so much, but I guess overall, I would give it a 6. My favorite clip that I watched today was End of Watch. It had a lot of events that happened in that clip where it's very realistic. It's things that I would have done, I have done it. If you enjoyed this video, you should click on the next one.